Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don and I am a digital marketer. Before we hop into today's episode, let me just play a quick message from our sponsor.
Being at the epicenter of the next breakthrough in biotechnology. That moment could happen for you this October at Bio on the Bayou 2025, where Southern innovation meets scientific excellence in the heart of New Orleans. Over 300 of the brightest minds in biotech are coming together for 2 extraordinary days in New Orleans. We're talking groundbreaking research from powerhouses like Tulane, Auburn, the University of Mississippi, Xavier University of Louisiana, and LSU Health. Expect revolutionary technologies, cutting-edge research, and industry-shaping expert panels that you won't find at any other event, plus networking opportunities that could transform your career. This isn't just another conference, it's an intensive 2-day summit where real partnerships form. We leverage the cutting-edge Partnering One platform to ensure that you'll connect with exactly the right people, whether you're seeking investors, research partners, or your next big opportunity. The future of biotechnology is being shaped right here in the broader Gulf South and having a global impact. Will you be part of it? Mark your calendar for October 28th and 29th. Head to bioonthebayou.com right now and secure your spot for the most exciting biotechnology event of 2025. The next breakthrough could be yours. Bio on the Bayou 2025. Register today.
In this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is David Craig. He's the CEO of Sarcomatrix Therapeutics with over 30 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry and a track record of successful drug development and commercialization. So with that, welcome, David. It's great to have you as a guest.
Hey, Don, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. I've been following Sarcomatrix for a little while.
I just lost,
Uh-oh, you lost my audio. So hopefully we'll get this back. Are you
okay.
there? You got me?
I,
Okay.
yes, I do.
All right. So would you just tell us a little bit about your journey to the pharmaceutical industry, David, and what led you to become the CEO of Sarcomatrix?
Listen, my dad's a pharmacist, and when I was halfway through pharmacy school, I realized counting pills by fives wasn't my gig. So I jumped on with Amgen in the early days in the late 80s, right when I graduated from school. And I feel like I've grown up with biotech through the years, and I've had a really great experience at several different biotech companies and, really rolling up my sleeves, learning a breadth and depth of information, and thought I'd take that forward in collaboration with the Dean Burkin Lab from the University of Nevada, Reno, and spin off a company.
Very good. And I would imagine that your history with big pharma, whether it's Amgen or Gilead or Alexion, it must have shaped somehow your approach as well at Sarcomatrix. How is it shaped how you do things?
Well, I realized I really enjoy startups in the kind of very early emerging phase. When I was at Amgen with George Rathman, there was about 90 of us. And same thing with Bill Liss at Portola. When I jumped on board, there was about 60, 70 of us. And then actually I was at Gilead before John Martin was, before he came on board. So I learned that this building a biotech company in parallel with launching a drug is a very complex and interesting um, gig. And working in collaboration with the teams that do this, it almost feels like going to battle and winning the war when you're done and you finally launch your product. And then the company grows to about 2 to 3 thousand employees or so, and it just changes in a good way. It becomes more stable, I guess, and more consistent. But it's not what I really enjoy. So that's why we jumped on board with Sarcomatrix. And frankly, I was getting a little tired of doing a lot of heavy lifting right below the C-suite. And I figured with, 37, 40 years of experience and what I have, might as well step up into the C-suite and see what we could do.
I think that's I mean I there's a part of what you're describing though is exactly sort of where I feel like I fit as well. Whenever you get to that sort of standard place where everything is more or less operating and the days aren't necessarily as exciting, I guess, as growing, initially, then it's time normally for me to move on as well. I find that really exciting to have, um, you know, just those initial startup sort of phases as well. And so I completely understand that aspect
I,
of as well.
I think it's an entrepreneurial gene that we have. And we just we need to go on to the next thing, the new challenge, the new learning opportunity, and the new challenge is just baked into the DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I saw on the Sarcomatrix website was that your mission is focusing on muscle wasting diseases. Can you first tell me what are muscle wasting diseases, and then explain a little bit more about your mission?
Sure. So, muscle wasting diseases in general is an imbalance between muscle atrophy and muscle hypertrophy. In fact, every day we're going to tear and repair about 2 million muscle fibers throughout our body. Muscle homeostasis is what that's called. So, muscle wasting diseases, you either have the body's inability to keep up with the daily wear and tear, or you have excessive damage on the front end. So, it's that balance between atrophy and hypertrophy is the large class of muscle wasting, but it covers a kind of a broad range of diseases. If it's a genetic defect, it's typically a muscular dystrophy, of which there's 30 different types and over 10,000 mutations. So the kids are born with it, and just throughout their lives, they just every day there's a little bit more wearing on their muscle and degrading of their muscle. And then on the other end, as we all age into our 70s, 80s, and beyond, in fact, in our 30s and every decade thereafter, whether we like it or not, we lose 3 to 5% of our muscle mass.
Hmm.
And part of that has to do with the physiology of a protein, alpha 7 beta 1 integrin, and the degradation of that protein. Um, so we'll talk about that later on why that's really important. And then, with the GLP-1s that came out recently, we're all losing weight, but then disproportionately we're losing too much muscle mass. So that's some concerns about muscle wasting. And then finally, chemotherapy or cachexia related muscle loss. About 75% of all patients that receive chemotherapy have significant muscle loss. And, we probably have had friends or relatives where you kind of watch that individual kind of whittle away, if you will. And oncologists know in their heart that it really negatively impacts outcomes. And I think that's a big miss, frankly. I think Pfizer and some others have some phase 2 programs for cachexia, but I look forward to when those drugs make it to the market. So broadly, muscle wasting is what it sounds like. The muscle slowly wastes away.
Okay, very good. And so I guess tell me more about the mission of Sarcomatrix as well.
Sure. So listen, long, long ago in the 80s, George Rathman used to give these really impassioned speeches at Amgen about how there's a unmet need or a disease or a ill out in the community, and it's our responsibility as scientists and professionals to bring drugs to market to solve for that. And he had this way of presenting that, frankly, made you want to get up and stick your head through a brick wall if you needed to. And we all were working 24 hours a day. And in fact, if you went into the parking lot or if you went into Amgen on the weekends, you'd see about 50% of the people were there just working 7 days a week. So he was really very inspiring. But it's that focus on the patient that, regardless of what company I've worked for, I think is like held true with me as we go forward. So when I showed up at the Birkin lab a few years back, muscular dystrophies is just a critical unmet need. And I think all those of us that are old enough remember the Jerry Lewis telethons
Oh,
where
sure.
he would there for Labor Day and he's, jumping around the stage and sweating and raising money. And I thought, well, Muscular Dystrophy Association, they probably raised a couple billion, and they have in research funds since the early days. And unfortunately, it's just now that we're starting to come forward with some really good treatments for muscular dystrophy. So true unmet need that's there. And then finally, um, I have family members with congenital muscular dystrophy.
Mm.
And so I think at times in our lives, the stars line up, and the stars lined up with my background and business experience in collaboration with the Birkin Lab from UNR. These drugs that the Birkin Lab's been working on probably should have been on the market 2 or 3, 4 years ago at least. And that's where my passion lies right now. So I've ended up with a passion project that more importantly is emerging company that more importantly has really good drugs that should be on the market here as soon as we can get them.
Very good. Can you share a little bit more about your innovative approach at Sarcomatrix to treating muscular wasting diseases?
Well, the Birkin Lab developed a high throughput screening platform with this unique and proprietary muscle assay. So they screen 500,000 small molecules. And our focus is on the protein alpha 7 beta 1 integrin. Now, this is a protein that when we exercise, it lives on the muscle fiber, and it's the mechanical transducer that when a muscle fiber is stretched and broken, triggers myogenesis and rebuilds the muscle fiber. And as an example, when we're healthy and we exercise, it'll increase 2 to 300% after we exercise for a day or two to rebuild muscle. Well, this platform that we built screens for molecules that increase alpha 7 beta 1 integrin expression independent of exercise. So we're basically making in diseases where there's limited mobility, like muscular dystrophy, it's going to make the exercise that the individuals get more effective, if you will. And then on the other end of the spectrum, this is the protein that degrades as we age and makes theoretically our exercise less effective. So if we can keep that protein expressed 2 to 300% or so over periods of time, maybe chronically even, we're basically making the muscle healthier or the myogenesis systems remain healthy, if you will, as we age and as we have other diseases.
It's really interesting as well because I mean, my both of my parents, in one way or another, you could say that they both passed away because of the fact that they fell, and I would imagine that both of them fell in large part because they just weren't as strong as they had been previously. So just a small sort of adjustment in their feet or anything else, they would fall, and those essentially, that's what ended their life. It would be interesting to know, like, long term, if our muscle mass is maintained, does that then mean that maybe we can keep our balance longer and recover from these things longer, as well, because who knows, it could extend life, as well. It's not, not something that I definitively know, but at the same time, as I looked at them, their muscle mass was definitely a lot less than when they were younger.
Well, Don, have you read Peter Attia's book, Outlived?
I have not. No.
Okay, so he'll get into the four pillars of maintaining health span along with lifespan, and I think a very underappreciated system is our entire musculature. It's the major glucose sink for metabolism, um, inflammatory issues. A lot of it has to do with maintaining muscle mass. And to your point, there is a correlation between reduced muscle mass, less balance, leading to falls, breaks, hospitalizations, etc. So if we can keep that muscle mass up, then we're doing great. Now, long ago when I was working at Vivus, we actually had a weight loss drug that would you could lose 20% of your body mass. And when we were promoting that drug, doctors used to say, well, people just need to exercise more and eat less. And then here we are today, understanding that with all the hormonal changes, the GLP-1s are really important for us to reestablish metabolism. I think that when we look at longevity and health span, kind of the next wave of maintaining health will be maintaining muscle mass. And when you talk to physical therapists and exercise people, and they'll tell you, well, just exercise more, and eat healthier. Well, even if you exercise and keep your body in great shape and you eat really well, you still degrade muscle as we age. And as an aside, I used to do Ironman triathlons when I was younger and really beat my body up. But if you really exercise a lot, this protein, alpha 7 beta 1 integrin, increases up to 500%
Mm.
to rebuild muscle. So if we could just kind of normalize things with about a twofold lift and maintenance of this protein, I think that our muscles will be healthier, and then the movement and exercise that we do get will have better results as we go forward. So that's why we think of Sarcomatrix as the healthy muscle company.
Yeah, absolutely. Given your experience with fundraising and drug development, I would imagine that it has to really help, overall as well, with your mission at Sarcomatrix.
Yeah, it does. The one thing that I'll share a little bit, and it's personal, and I share this mostly to let you know background on my mission and why I'm so passionate about this is when I started this 3 years ago. My niece Chloe Nickel Craig was still alive, and she has congenital muscular dystrophy. But I could tell that she was kind of trending in the wrong direction, and she really needs some help. And I was really hoping to get the drug on the market. Unfortunately, she passed away February 20th of 2024, but her spirit still lives alive in the company and is kind of a guiding star as we go forward. So we're absolutely committed to get these drugs and other drugs to the market and really focus on muscular dystrophy and solve that problem.
Yeah, it's one of those things where having a direct personal tie, as tragic as her death may be, it also is, very good way to sort of establish that solid foundation of, wanting to drive forward to complete the development of the drug as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Don.
So what are some of the unique challenges that you're facing in terms of developing treatments for muscle wasting diseases?
Well, so the Birkin lab focuses on small molecules for alpha 7 beta 1 integrin, and then they also have a laminin 111, which is a protein that makes up the basement membrane of our skeletal muscles. So there's a ultra rare disease, LAMA2 RD, congenital muscular dystrophy, about 6,000 patients, and these children they're born effectively without skeletal muscles, and it's not uncommon that they never walk or they're wheelchair bound their entire lives, and it's not uncommon that they pass away in their early teens. So that's a critical unmet need. I think one of the challenges that I have is that when you look at advancing and developing small molecules and proteins, it's basically two different companies. You've got two different manufacturing processes, regulatory agencies, and there's just skill sets in the different drugs that are uh, different enough that we had to prioritize one over the other due to restricted resources. So that's why we're starting with the small molecules. And then the other thing I would say is that we happened to start the company in the nuclear winter of fundraising for biotech, and it's been a real challenge. I hear stories about in 2019 you show up with a slide deck and get a Series A, 60 million. You're off to the races, and those days are long, long gone. So what keeps me going every day is I keep reminding myself that both Google and Facebook were started during a very tough time to raise money. And so I think the bar's higher. that makes it more rigorous for us to get the funding. But I think it makes us better at what we do and de-risks the program, if you will, because you just have to grind it out, rewrite the business plan, re-challenge your assumptions, and go forward. And then finally, I would add that I think VCs are a little, they're very much focused on CRISPR and gene editing and cell therapies. I get that. It's really sexy science. I love it. And then artificial intelligence is another thing with a lot of investments. And then oncology or cancer. I get why you invest in that because the risk benefit of the side effect profile versus the efficacy is pretty straightforward. But don't forget small molecules that have different mechanisms of action, and that's where we're at right now. I think one of the challenges is we've got some headwinds because it just small molecules for whatever reason seem to be a little bit out of favor, if you will.
Yeah, it's funny because I would say I probably went a good 2 years in the podcast here before I interviewed the first person that came on and talked about small molecules. And I remember the discussion early on was, look, just curious what, are we gonna walk away from this interview and maybe nobody watches? But the reality was we actually got quite a few, downloads of that particular episode. I think one, because the story was interesting, and two, because, hey, look, uh, there is still some interest. It's just not as not expressed, sometimes on the fundraising side and other things. I do worry about the current state of things with regards to like government funding and government grants and things like that. And yes,
Agreed.
it's a long sort of grind to get grants and things like that, but it supported, a lot of companies that were trying to survive through this, as you said, nuclear winter. And now with things, just very uncertain, it is a time where I just worry about, where we're going to wind up with some of these corporations, right? So
Yeah, I agree. I think that with the IRA, there's been a focus on proteins and biologicals versus small molecules. And I suspect that, and I think that they're reassessing that and maybe make some tweaks to that, which probably would help. I was looking at approvals in the last year or two, and the majority of approvals actually are small molecules still versus gene editing and CRISPR. And then I'm going to say something that's not really popular, but if you look at the Gartner technology adoption cycle, you have the slope of enthusiasm, the peak of enthusiasm, and then the slope of disillusion. And the slope of disillusion is when all the practical issues about the challenge of the drug administration, the cost of drug administration, the limitations of getting virus through the liver, all those issues are really cropping up right now. So I think CRISPR and gene editing for many diseases that are not single point mutations like Mendelian uh, are on the slope of disillusion right now.
hmm.
And that's not good or bad. It just is, and we're wrestling through all the issues to make that happen. I just remind every VC and investor that I talk to is don't forget about small molecules. And here's why I think it's really important. The good news about a small molecule is that it penetrates membranes and gets to all targets. Now, the bad news about small molecules is it penetrates membranes and gets to all targets. So that's why your risk benefit profile and your safety profile is so important. But in the muscular dystrophy space, if you look at the gene therapies that Sarepta brought forward, and then the oligonucleotides with NS Pharma and others, they're doing, a reasonably good job on skeletal muscle. But what they're not affecting is cardiac muscle. And considering that the leading cause of death, like with my niece, was cardiac failure, it, if you don't support the cardiac muscle, are you really extending lifespan? In fact, there's one theory that says that if you really regenerate skeletal without cardiac, you might shorten lifespan because you're stressing the cardiac muscle. That's just a theory, and it sounds very, very negative, but it's something to think about. So I'm getting some real traction lately as people are starting to wake up in the muscular dystrophy community and say, hey, listen, the sarcomatrix compounds do a very good job on maintaining cardiac function and cardiac muscle. and whether used alone or in combination, there's a critical need for them. And I think that's what I really like about the program is if we, and we'll price it right so that we deliver reasonable returns to the investors, and then price it so that it's affordable in the marketplace. I suspect that insurers will encourage first line use, or it can be used in combination too. And I'd like to price it so that it's reasonable to be used in combination for that very important reason of skeletal and cardiac muscle.
Very good. The How do you balance your role as a CEO with your advisory positions that you currently maintain as well?
Well, I'm trying to shed some of the advisory positions, truth be told. I'm finding that being a CEO is very invigorating, a lot of fun, but it's a 24/7, 365 job. And as much as I'd like to help other biotech companies at the University of Nevada, Reno, I to the extent that I can, I make time for them, but I'm dialing back on that right now.
Oh. Well, it is one of those things as well that, you're in that fundraising cycle now, and then I do feel like, for the CEOs that I've advised as well, that season of raising funds just doesn't end until you hit the target that you're trying to hit, right? Because you never know, when you might need the next round as well. So it very much becomes a full-time job as well. I agree with you, but there's plenty of people that are on the podcast that also come on and say, look, I divide my time here and there, and yeah, they sort of spend a lot of time in other capacities as well. So very interesting to hear your level of focus as well.
Well, I do keep my position as an entrepreneur in residence at the University of Nevada because I really want to give back. I give lectures there, and I think in San Francisco, San Diego, and Massachusetts, other biotech hubs, there's a general understanding that uh, the basic research leads to something on the market in a very entrepreneurial flair. I think University of Nevada is really changing in that they've got about 200 million in NIH grants over the last 10 years. It's done some really good basic research, and I kind of think grants are almost like crack cocaine with these researchers because once you get hooked on them and you're finding your lab, everything seems to be fine. But you really do need to, for the benefit of patients, and then also to deliver license fees back to the university, you need to get these drugs on the market. And that's where I think I've been added tremendously added value to University of Nevada, Reno, and will continue to do so.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, my view, at least in terms of whether you're a drug company or a diagnostic company or even a medical device company that's out there, the only way to really sort of accelerate your ability to hit it to, head to market is really to get some sort of private funding, right? So whether it's through a
Yeah.
VC or it's through a private equity firm or whatever, it definitely does boost organizations, so that they can move forward with the things that they need to move forward with, and then hopefully bring new things to market faster. Um, Grants, from my perspective, are great to have. Like I said, they can be a survival mechanism whenever you're currently trying to figure out, okay, so exactly how do I position this thing so that it's attractive enough for an outside investor to want to come on. But it in terms of actual delivery of a commercial product, it's very hard to see how somebody's going to make it through 20 years of grants to bring product to market whenever somebody else most likely along that same pathway is going to find a way to get private funding and accelerate past you at some point.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. I think the NIH and especially their seed group that focuses on entrepreneuring and advancing programs is really important, and they've been very, very helpful. But once you get into the valley of death, and you've got all your relatively inexpensive bench small animal studies done and in vitro and in silico studies done, when you start getting into non-human primates and we're talking $1 to $2 million for just a basic PK/PD study, then it starts to get into real money. And like NIH Seed will they have a commercialization program where you can get $1 million every year for 3 years, and that sounds like a lot of money, and it goes pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
to your point, you do need private investments. One of the things I didn't find out until recently is when we were at Amgen in the early days, there was this saying that said, "Don't look at the checkbook when you write the check." And I always thought, well, that's a little odd. What? And they basically said, listen, spend wisely, do your work. We won't micromanage you, and, go and do great things, right? Well, I didn't find out until a couple months ago that George Rathman had a sugar daddy that would, whenever he needed a $50 million or so, he'd just, pick up the phone and get another 50 million. And I long, that would be really great. Wouldn't that be awesome to have that? But that's probably a once in a lifetime for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure.
to your point, I think the family, what I'm finding is that I'm getting a lot of traction with the private family and the private equity funds. And
Yeah.
there's quite a few things in the hopper right now, and I think we've got some good momentum and things are happening.
Yeah, I feel like family office with a passion behind a specific whatever it might be can definitely, help out companies in this space as well. And it's always finding that matching ability. And you were telling me before we got started that you just got back from JP Morgan as well. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, more of those conversations, happen there as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say to entrepreneurs is you never know when things are going to resonate, and you're gonna like. I was at a pitch competition that was with Freedom Fest down in Vegas a while back, and the three judges were Steve Forbes from Forbes magazine, John Mackey, who started Whole Foods, and Rob Arnault, who's CEO of Research Associates that advises PIMCO funds. Right, he's a quant guy. And I ended up taking third, and I'm kind of scratching my head because I think I probably had a better presentation, et cetera. And I get a call from Rob Arnault, or he reaches out like a week afterwards, and he's like, I don't know what those other guys were thinking, but you were the best. I know I'm bragging a little bit here, but more importantly, Rob said, I believe in what you're doing, and I'd like to write you a check.
Awesome.
And I hadn't anticipated that. And so just get out there, raise the awareness of your product, focus on the patient, and good things will happen eventually.
Well, thank you for sharing that because I know that there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs that struggle from time to time with, really should I just continue this or is this at the end of the day just not ever going to make it right? And there's got to be that continued nagging, in the back of your mind, and so having other entrepreneurs say, no, continue to be relentless and focus and keep moving forward. It's worth it in the end.
You know what really helps, Don, is having a supportive spouse. She's been great. It's been 3 years without a salary. I got three kids in college, all out of state, and the bills add up a little bit. But she's been. I think she sees how much joy and passion I get out of it, and how fulfilling it is for me, and that makes my life better and our lives better. And my wife Kendall's really awesome. Can't say enough about her.
Well, thank you for sharing that as well. What's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your 30-year career in the pharmaceutical industry?
Hmm. Um, I think at the end of the day, it's startups are not perfect, and so it's about small incremental improvements and doing your best every day and learning every day. And the 0.5% improvement in productivity or the quality of the program and delivering or whatever, every day that builds up, and pretty soon you've got a great program. So I think learning, continuous learning, persistence, and really being open to collaborate with others are just some universal truths that ring through wherever I'm working and make a big difference. I have to credit a colleague, Al Swartz, from Amgen back in the days, he made me read Deming's book Out of the Crisis, which is about like 600 pages of wonky stuff, but it's basic quality improvement stuff that to this day is the foundation of what I use for management practices. And actually went back and reread the book recently, and it was a great recommendation.
A lot of good things that Edwards Deming brought to life, life in in his career as well. So I don't know that I could survive 600 pages of his teachings. So
I'm
good on you.
exaggerating. It's probably 300. Just
Yeah.
nowadays anything more than 25 pages seems to be a read, as opposed to a podcast or an audiobook, which is much more approachable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the stats on audio on podcast at least. I've done fair amount of research around this as well. I mean, there's plenty of people that start a podcast and never continue. Right? They get a few episodes in and see that this is real work to do. But then there's other people that once you start to listen to a podcast, 80% of people listen to it all the way through, which is
Really?
a really interesting statistic. Because I mean, you think about how many books that you might have bought in your lifetime where you read a few chapters and laid the thing down and never went back, right? Audiobooks, I
Yeah.
think, are similar, where a lot of us will continue to slog through an audiobook with the promise of possibly getting to something better at the end. Um,
Yeah.
but I would imagine, just that, just reading the text and going through, there's a lot of people that sort of, stop along the way.
Yeah. I think you're right. Well, and I think it says to the longevity of your podcast and what you've got going here, the quality of what you got going. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think you got a really nice, got a good gig.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's what's interesting to me is that the stories that you guys tell is what keeps this going for me. So, getting to engage with you, getting to hear your story, and getting to hear why do this. I mean, I tell you, I sort of start a lot of podcasts with there's an easier life that a lot of us could choose, but some people choose to be in life sciences, and I feel like
Yeah.
this is not the easiest life to choose to sort of pick for your profession. Like you said, if you wanted to go do something in AI or Bitcoin or gambling or something else, there are quicker paths to making a dollar if that was your mission. But when your mission is to try and fix something that broke somebody that was in your family, it's
Hmm.
it becomes more of a passion project, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people just don't understand unless you have to live through it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And uh, whether it's med tech, biotech, or devices, etc., it does. Certain people really gravitate towards it, and I'm
Yeah.
definitely one of them. Yeah.
So, David, what inspires you?
Well, besides my niece inspires me, what really, listen, there's nothing better than bringing, collaborating with a team, building a company, and bringing the drug to market, and then more importantly, meeting someone that has used your drug and it made a difference in their lives. There's been times like at Portola where we had a reversal agent for factor 10A inhibitors, and you get the call about the woman that's in a car accident and has a severe bleed to the point where they're using a 5-gallon bucket underneath a gurney and they're dumping blood in the individual, and you expedite getting your drug there, and it turns off it takes the factor 10A inhibitor away and turns and hemostasis happens, and all of a sudden it's like turning off a faucet, and then
Mhm.
seeing the patient recover, and then the joy of the caregivers that were like, wow, that really worked. And that's when it's really special. Doesn't happen enough, but when it does happen, it's very uh, it's hard to describe. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. What concerns you?
Hmm. Well, I hope that I back to the grant funding at NIH. I think that the dollars invested in basic research across universities throughout the United States is absolutely critical. You start talking to kind of the breadth of basic research and what these really intelligent research teams are doing to drive science forward and identify new targets is absolutely critical for us to maintain our advantage in biotechnology, technology, pharmaceuticals, et cetera. So I really hope that that continues in with today's environment. I know it's a lot of money. I think it's money very well spent, and I hope it continues. So that's my probably a number one concern today.
And what excites you?
What excites me, getting up every day and making a difference and learning and growing and like it's like my buddy Al was saying yesterday. He goes, so many years in the industry, but every day I learn something new. And that's what's exciting to me is learning something new, a new challenge, and addressing that and moving things forward.
Well, David Craig, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success podcast. I really appreciated our conversation. And it was great to hear about both Sarcomatrix and just the inspiration that you get from Kendall as well to continue on. So it's great to have you on the show. I really appreciated having you here.
Don, it's been my pleasure. And listen, if there's anything I could do for you and your podcasts in the future, just please pick up the phone, give me a call.
Absolutely. Thank you.